bringing you the latest Arizona high school football recruiting news year-round. This is the Recruiting Roundup on ProsToPreps.com.
It's time for the Roundup. Jason Jewell, Jared Cohen. We are into week 3 of the high school football season. It's been a great year so far. We got some big matchups coming up this weekend. We'll see the prospects facing off. We'll get to that in a moment. And we'll also get to the players that stood out last week and some great performances to go over. But first, recruiting news. First and foremost, a commitment came down to Queen Creek State Championships running back.
Yeah, Matt Guida made his commitment to Air Force. Now, Guida's been banged up a little bit this year. He's only rushed for 115 yards and 3 touchdowns in his one game. You know, last year he rushed for almost 3,000 yards. I was a little surprised that he'd committed to Air Force this early because I know he was searching for one of those bigger offers. But he had offers from multiple Ivy League programs and from Army. Academics and his education are paramount in his life. Picking Air Force is huge for him and a great pickup for the Falcons.
Yeah, Air Force has recruited a lot in the Valley over the last couple of years, so Guida is the latest to commit to the Falcons. There was also a big offer that came down in the last week. The first time we're going to mention, Jason, a 2016 prospect. It's crazy, 2016 seems far away, but it's really not. Garrett Rand, maybe the top prospect in that class, kind of hard to tell at this point. He received his first offer.
Yeah, Arizona State offered the big 6'4", 250-pound defensive tackle from Hamilton. And I'm the first guy that says, hey, I'm skeptical on offering those kids at that young of an age, but Rand has played on varsity and started at Chandler Hamilton, one of the best schools in the entire nation, not just the state of Arizona. So I think this is a smart move for Arizona State.
Yeah, started as a freshman for the state championship champion-winning Huskies last season. Now let's get into last week. Our recruiting roundup player of the week. We've had 2 already, Wesley Payne, Mountain Point. Bryce Perkins, Chandler. This week's is a player that had a phenomenal week against the top team going into the week in Division II, Chaparral. Quarterback Josh Eckley at Marcos Deniza had a monster football game against a great team.
Oh, he just went off, had 331 yards in the air and 100 yards on the ground. Just showed his versatility. He had 6 touchdowns total. Why has no one offered this kid a scholarship?
It blows my mind. Marcos has now beaten Chaparral 3 consecutive times if you go back to the 2 last season. Don't see Chaparral lose to the same team 3 times in a row very often. Let's get into a running back that really stood out last week. A guy we've mentioned quite a bit. He was the next in line after JALEN Ortiz left Centennial. Dedrick Young had his best game of the season.
Yeah, big game against Bash. A huge win for the Coyotes, rebounding from their loss to Chandler. Had 230 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's a player, only a junior, that I think is going to be a BCS level player. Centennial's had loads of Division I talent, and Young is the strongest kid ever in their 3-lift total, over 1,300 pounds, and only a junior.
We talk about Bryant O'Georgia out at North Canyon. Was a sleeper prospect, ended up picking up 2 offers over the summer. North Canyon struggled last season. They're 0-2 so far this year, but they've played teams really tight because they have so much talent on the outside. It's more in the trenches where they struggle. And even though O'Georgia had a great game, it was his teammate Anuchi Okwali that had a monster game, even though the Rattlers came up short last week.
5 total touchdowns, and he took 2 interceptions to the house, 100 yards. Very impressive. I personally have not seen him play live, but I'm going to get to see him play this Thursday live against Valley Vista.
And then the final player to bring you another running back that had a huge game, 8-man football for Duncan High School. Cale Merrill had 395 on the ground and 6 touchdowns in the victory. So a monster game for him. It's kind of the year of the running back, Jason. We've mentioned some monster running back numbers over the last couple of weeks.
Big-time performances. That just goes to show that there's a lot of talent here in the state of Arizona.
So let's look ahead to this coming week. Some big-time matchups, especially in Division I, the one that I'm going to be going to check out on Thursday. Pinnacle, 2-0, 2 solid victories going up against the state champion Hamilton Huskies. We will see what Pinnacle is made of this week, and their junior quarterback, who is just 2 games in as the starting guy, getting his first really big test against the Huskies in Brian Lewerke.
Yeah, he's had a very solid start as throwing 60% completions, 440 yards, 5 touchdowns to 3 picks, but I'm really excited to see him play against the best secondary in the state of Arizona.
Yeah, Brian Lewerke camped at Alabama in the offseason, talked with Nick Saban, so he's getting some looks. He's also been offered by Arizona State already. He's going up against a Hamilton secondary. We mentioned their defensive line last week, which is one of the best in the state. Well, their secondary is also one of the best units in the state.
Absolutely loaded. We got JALEN Jenkins, one of their safeties, a big-time player. JUWAN Jones, a big safety who has plenty of offers already. JOSIAH POLA, another kid that's been a starter on their team since he was a sophomore. And then we look at corner Greathouse, who I thought had a great game last week against Brophy. This is going to be a good matchup.
The next game we want to hit on, Desert Edge going up against Sabino. They're going down to Tucson. Desert Edge has just had a fantastic start to the season, picking up where they left off last year after coming up just short in the state championship game. The guy to keep an eye on is a guy that everyone is raving about. Even opposing coaches are raving about him. Elijah Marks, their wide receiver, he's actually coming off a huge game and looks to keep that trend going against Sabino.
A lot of people talking about Ishmael Murphy Richardson, but it's been Elijah Marks so far this year. He had 14 catches, 232 yards, and 4 touchdowns last week in their win against Prescott.
And Sabino has a receiver of their own. He's actually a tight end, but they see him split out quite a bit. And Matt Bushman, he's the guy on the other end that's going to be catching a lot of balls.
Yeah, Bushman's more of that new school tight end. Will line up out in the slot. 11 catches so far this year, 210 yards, 3 touchdowns. We could have 2 big-time passing performances in this game.
And the final game to hit on is going to be out on the west side. 2 teams in the lower divisions, but are planning to be state championship contenders this season in the lower divisions. Cactus going up against Shadow Ridge. It's Cactus's running game as always, and Jalen James is the guy to keep an eye on.
Yeah, only a junior's only played in 1 game so far, had 150 yards and 3 touchdowns in that 1 game. But I like this game because it's kind of old school versus new school. Cactus and Coach Beckenhire have done a very, very good job there. Another good running back in Cactus, Austin Marshall. They'll be playing against Shadow Ridge. I said they're the new school team. They're playing very, very well. Had a big win against Deer Valley in week 1, but their big-time offensive lineman, Tavita Matu, 6'2" and a 300-pound kid. He's going to be blocking, and he is one of the most underrated players in the state of Arizona, in my opinion. But one of the key matchups, I think, in this game will be Shadow Ridge linebacker Sam Verstraten having to tackle those 2 good linebackers at Cactus.
So there you have it, some big matchups coming up this weekend. We will bring you the results and the players that stood out next week, as we always do, and preview the following week's games. We're all season long here on the Recruiting Roundup as we're in the thick of the high school football season. Until next time, Jason Jewell, Jared Cohen, this has been the Recruiting Roundup on ProsToPreps.com.